From Shir HaShirim, I went down to the garden to look at the green plants of the valley, to see whether the vine budded and the pomegranates were in flower. El ginate koz yaradeti lirot beibei hanachal lirot haparcha hakefen heinetzu arimoni. Come with me from Lebanon, my bride. Iti milvanon, iti kalatavo, iti milvanon, iti kalatavo. Ho, 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 El ginate goes yaradeti lirot beibei hanachal lirot haparcha hakefen heinetzu
Shabbat Shalom, Cantor Addy.
Shabbat Shalom, Rabbi Bauer.
It's really good to see you.
Good to see you too.
So tonight I'm going to invite everyone, if you'd like to follow along in a virtual prayer book, if you just type into Google virtual Mishkan Tefillah and just make sure you choose the Shabbat edition. We'll be calling out page numbers if you want to follow along, or you can just get really comfortable, maybe starting the wine a little bit earlier than we actually say the blessing, and just kind of move into Shabbat. And so it is my pleasure, I guess, excitement to invite the Cassiolas to join us to light the candles right now. And we're on page 2.
Cassiola family, we want you to come on. Here you are. Hi, Joel, Brenda, and Amy. So good to see you.
Shabbat shalom.
Shabbat shalom.
Shabbat shalom.
Shabbat shalom.
Light the candles. Okay.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu l'hadlik ner shel Shabbat.
Amen.
Thank
Amen.
you.
So good to see you. Thank you for joining us tonight.
I was saying earlier that it's like the second best thing because I miss seeing the Cassiolas in the seventh row on the right every single week. But yeah, it's a little bit closer here, so I guess I'll take what I can get. We're going to continue on with Lechado D on page 20.
Okay. Sorry. Oops, sorry about that. Shamor v'zachor b'dibur echad hishmi'anu el ha'meyuchad Adonai echad u'shmo echad shemo tiferet I'm on verse 5. Hitoreri, ki va'orech kumi uri, shir daveri, kivod Adonai, ayich nigla, olecha dodi likrat kala b'nei Shabbat nekabela, olecha dodi likrat kala b'nei Shabbat nekabela. Boi v'shalom ateret bala gam b'simcha u'b'tzola toch emunei am segula boi chala olecha dodi likrat kala b'nei Shabbat nekabela, olecha dodi likrat kala b'nei Shabbat nekabela.
We're going to continue on page 24 with Shalom Alechem as we welcome in the Sabbath angels.
Shalom Aleichem, Malachei Hasharet, Malachei Elyon, Mi Melech, Malachei Hamlachim. מלך מלכי המלכים, הקדוש ברוך הוא. צאתכם לשלום, מלכי השלום, מלכי עליון. מי מלך מלכי המלכים, הקדוש ברוך הוא.
I'm going to invite you to find east wherever you are. So all of us are unified and facing east. And if you're comfortable, I would also like to invite you to please rise as we move to page 28 for the Baruch.
Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad, Baruch Shem Kevod Malchuto Le'ed. And we are on page 36 if you're following along in the prayer book. ואהבת את אדוני אלוהיך בכל לבבך ובכל נפשך ובכל מאודיך. והיו הדברים האלה אשר אנוכי מצווך היום על לבביך, ושיננתם לבניך, ודיברת בם בשבתך בביתך ובלכתך בדרך ובשוכבך ובקומך, וקשרתם לאות על ידיך, והיו לטוטפות בין עיניך, וכתבתם על מזוזות ביתך ובשעריך, למען תזכרו ועשיתם את כל מצוותיי, והייתם קדושים לאלוהיכם. אני אדוני אלוהיכם, אשר הוצאתי אתכם מארץ מצרים, להיות לכם לאלוהים. אני אדוני אלוהיכם, אדוני אלוהיכם אמת.
And on page 40, if you think about this week has really been about escaping slavery, but also talking about freedom, talking about being able to become the people we wanted to be and to begin to move the world in that direction. And so we begin, and later in the service, we're going to be counting the Omer because it's part of that journey from this point in Egypt as we move towards Sinai, which is coming in Shavuot. And Sinai is where we receive the Torah, but it's also where we receive that mission. So when we're singing Mi Chamocha and we're on the edge of that sea and we're celebrating freedom, we're also acutely aware in our minds that being free is only half of it. The real journey is actually figuring out what your mission is and then heading in that direction.
And we're we're still in the melody of the season. Mi chamucha ba'elim Adonai, mi kamocha nedar b'kodesh nora tehilot osef eleh. Malchutecha ra'uvanecha bokei hayam lifnei Moshe uMiriam. Ze'eli, Ze'eli, anu ve'ameru Adonai yimloch le'olam va'ed. Let there be love and understanding among us. Let peace and friendship be our shelter from life's storms. Let there be love and understanding among us. Let peace and friendship be our shelter from life's storms.
As a congregation, we are praying for the healing of Susan Cole, Frank Friedman, Ruth Rishin, Marilyn Lebarsky, Rusty Holden, Lauren Knickerbocker, Terry Borer, Marco Friedman, Judy Johnson, Steffi Tick, Gail Loggy, Mike Foley, Emma Stievelman, Monica Wunschnick, Susan Foley, and Judy Nadell. If there's someone else who you are praying for their healing, either of their body or of their spirit, and sometimes both, if you'll please type into the chat who you're praying for. Mishaberach Avotenu v'imotenu Avraham Yitzhak v'Yaakov. Sarah Rivka Rachel v'Leah hu yivarech et achulim. May the one who blessed our ancestors Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, Sarah, Rebecca, Rachel, and Leah, bless and heal those who are ill. May the blessed Holy One be filled with the compassion for their health to be restored and their strength to be revived. And may God swiftly send them a complete renewal of body and a complete renewal of spirit. And let us say, Amen.
ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורותם בריתו עם. ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורותם בריתו עולם. ונלווה בני ישראל אותי לעולם, אותי לעולם. ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם. כי ששת ימים עשה אדוני, עשה אדוני את השמיים ואת הארץ. ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם. וביום השביעי שבת וינפח
We're continuing now with the Amidah, and if you're following along, we're on page 46.
Adonai sefatai tiftach ufi yagi tehilatecha. Adonai, open up my lips, that my mouth may declare your praise. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu, v'Elohei avotenu v'imotenu, Elohei Abraham, Elohei Yitzchak, v'Elohei Yaakov, Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Rachel, v'Elohei Leah, Ha'el Hagadol, Hagibor v'Hanora, El Elyon, Gomel Chasadim Tovim, V'Konei Hakol, V'Zocher Chasdei Avot v'Imahot, U'Mevi Geulah Livnei Bneihem, Leman Shemo B'Ahava, Melech Ozer U'Mosheh U'Magen, Baruch atah Adonai, Magen Avraham v'Ezrat Sarah, Atah Gibor le'olam Adonai, Mechayeh hakol atah Rav leHoshia, Morid Hatal. Morid Hatal. We are now in Morid Hatal. Mechalkel chayim v'chesed, mechayei hakol berachamim rabim, somech noflim v'rofei cholim, umatir asurim, umekayem emunato, lishenei afar, michamocha bal gevurot, umido melach, Melech meimit u'mechayeh u'matzmiach Yeshua v'ne'eman atah l'chayot hakol Baruch atah Adonai mechayeh hakol Atah kadosh v'shimcha kadosh u'kedoshim b'chol yom yahlalucha selah Baruch atah Adonai Ha'el HaKadosh.
I'm going to invite you to continue silently, either with the words in your heart or if you're following along with the words on the page.
I just want to explain that change in the Amidah. Until Pesach, we say Mashiv. In the middle, there's a little insert there right before when the Gevurot begin, and we've been saying Mashiv HaRuach U'Morid HaGashem. It says who brings the wind and the rain, and brings down rain, because that's what happens in the wintertime. But when after Pesach, we now say, because we're heading into the summer, and especially if you think about times in the desert in the Middle East, they were praying for rain. So it says Umorid Hatal, which is now there's not going to be rain, but there's going to be dew, D-E-W, dew. So Morid Hatal brings down the tal. This is another piece of text that we sing during Pesach. It's called Min HaMetzar Karatiya. It's a beautiful piece of text. It says, from the narrow place, Meitzar, which is also connected to the word Mitzrayim from Egypt. Min ha-Meitzar karatiya, from the narrow place I called out to God. Anani b'merchavya, and God answered me across the great distance. Min ha-Meitzar karatiya, Anani b'merchavya, min ha-Meitzar karatiya, Anani b'merchavya, min ha-Meitzar karatiya, Anani b'merchavya, min ha-Meitzar karatiya, Anani b'merchavya. Adonai li lo ira, ma yaseh li adam. Adonai lo ira, ma yaseh li adam. Adonai li lo ira, ma yaseh li adam. Adonai li lo ira, ma yaseh li adam. Min ha-Meitzar karatiya, Anani b'merchavya, min ha-Meitzar karatiya, Anani b'merchavya.
This week, during Passover and all of the talk about Egypt, I keep thinking back to when I was in my 20s, when I spent nearly a month in Egypt, traveling all across Egypt. And I went all the way to the Sahara, to the edge of Libya, where I stayed on an oasis. I went to Cairo, to Luxor, Alexandria, and everything in between. And I became riveted by Egypt and the artifacts. Now, in going to the Cairo Museum, I stayed until it was closing, and I woke up the first thing the next morning to go back. And it took me a while to figure out why I was so insatiable about this Egyptian history and the magnitude of that civilization. It was a civilization that felt bigger than anything I had ever seen in my life. It made Washington, D.C. look cute compared to the monuments that they built. I'd never been riveted in this way in my entire life. And I was trying to figure out what about it captured my attention. Was part of my obsession the fact that it was massive? The fact that the monument still existed? The fact that our tradition teaches that we're the ones who actually built all of this? Which for me was hard to believe because I barely can change a light bulb. I always call it a handyman. But the thing that kept hitting me, that struck me so much over those weeks, is that as I spent time in Egypt and in Cairo and in Luxor, was that something so massive and huge, a civilization that was built out of stone to last thousands of years, was gone. Not even a fraction of who they were, but just gone. And all that remained was stone, not the civilization. I looked at the carvings and the edifices, and I tried to imagine what the civilizations were like 3,300 years ago. And now it sits dead in a museum, not thriving and changing, but static and finished and a thing of the past. And I think what struck me was that while the most powerful civilization in the world was gone, we, as the Jewish people, were still here. The Jews, who were the bottom rung of society, the ultimate other, who were slaves building the stones that would last, were a civilization that was not dead. It was a civilization that was not static. It was not something it was something actually in the present, and it was expanding into the future. And here I was, 3,300 years later, a Jew standing over tombs and monuments of a civilization that was no more. And it led me to wonder, what was the thing? What was the difference between the Egyptians and the Jews that led to this? Now, I want to share a teaching from Rabbi Jonathan Sacks of blessed memory. Rabbi Sacks, he asked the same question about why did the Jewish people survive and the Egyptians did not? What was different? Because it's unlikely for us still to exist. Sacks points out that the earliest text ever found that references the people of Israel is found in the Merneptah Stele, which is a piece of rock carved by the Pharaoh following Ramses, following the Pharaoh of the Exodus. And it can be found in that Cairo museum that I was in. And on that rock, it says that the people of Israel are no more. The people of Israel are laid to waste. The first text that we find outside of the Bible about us is our obituary. It says we're gone. But you see, something happened at that exact moment in time that led one civilization to be gone and one group to survive and thrive. Now, while Ramses was building massive monuments from stone and put all of his energy into building physical structures so that their civilization would last thousands of years, Moses, he gives a speech the night before the Exodus to lay the foundation for us to survive for thousands of years. Not with a focus on building buildings, but building something much more enduring. In Exodus 12, Moses gives the instruction for remembering Passover, and then he repeats himself not once, but 3 times. And he says, when your children ask you. Now, the slaves are thinking about freedom. Now, they may be thinking about the land of Israel, but none of that is on Moses' mind. Rabbi Sacks, he points out that while Jews are thinking about freedom, Moses is thinking about education. They're thinking about the now. He is thinking about the future. The future in survival, it's not found in buildings, but it's actually found in the generations that come after us. Education and development of the mind and the soul is the key to a civilization's survival. Think about what becomes our main focus in Judaism. It's not the temple in Jerusalem, it's the rabbis. Now, what does rabbi mean? Rabbi means teacher. When we talk about Moses, we say Moshe Rabbeinu, Moses, our teacher. Our community is endeavoring on the greatest campaign in 100 years. We are aiming to raise $97 million, and it's not to build a building. It's to create a space to fill the souls and the minds. From the outset, we said that we were driven by the fundamental mission of creating a space for our children and then our children's children, which many of us will never know, but because of our efforts, we'll have a place to learn, to be seen, to be heard, to laugh, and to cry in. You see, this was not a new idea. We got this from Moshe Rabbeinu. If you're trying to ensure your survival of your people, focus all of your building by creating a space for the development of the mind and the soul. But what do you teach? I mean, once you've built this place, what do you teach once you have everyone gathered? Because once you've built your Beit Midrash, once you've built your house of study for the next generation, that's the question you have to ask. And this was not lost on Moses, that this is the logical next question. And he had an answer. Teach your children that you were slaves in Egypt, that you know what it's like to be a slave and never treat anyone the way that you were treated when you were foreign and you were others. That is what we've been doing all week during Pesach. We've been reliving and acting out that experience of tasting the food that those slaves tasted, because they are not a them, they're an us. We were the slaves. And so in each generation, as we are confronted with this task, we're then asked and prodded and poked to examine our own lives, our own community, and our own worlds. And then asked if we are living up to this teaching by remembering that we were the other. So when we see acts of hate against Asians, every single Jew, every white Jew, every black Jew, every brown Jew, and every Asian Jews are obligated to stand up, because what has been etched in all of our souls since Moses stood before us that night before the Exodus was a reminder of who we were, and therefore who we are, and what our job in the world is. When we look at our own Jewish community, it becomes our fundamental task to make sure that DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion, it's not a focus of ours, but it's actually who we are. Now, being a white man, it means it's incumbent upon me to ask and to hear stories from others who are not me, because it's only through learning and then engaging that we can build our community closer to how it ought to be. And so on this Pesach, I implore all of you to ask yourself if you're heeding the guidance from Moshe Rabbeinu, from Moses, our teacher, to not only teach, but to learn from all of those around you. Because it's only when that happens that our civilization will continue to grow and change and thrive and look different than it did 50 years ago, different than it did 300 years ago, and different than it did as we stood in rags in front of Moses, imagining what life would be like outside of Egypt. And he reminded us to teach our children. Now, those slaves, they never could have imagined what was coming in the next 3,300 years. But what they could do is create a space that accepted and embraced everyone, especially to make sure that the slave, that the other, would never feel that way around us, because we know what it's like to be a slave in Egypt. Chag Sameach.
Chag Sameach, Rabbi. Rabbi, will you explain to everybody? I am going to count the Omer, but I'd love you to let everybody understand it a little bit.
I would love to. So the counting of the Omer, it's literally a counting from Pesach, and it's part of our journey. If we think about that, we're literally leaving Egypt, and we're finally free, and we think it's over, and the rabbis go, "Oh, not over. It's about to begin." And it's a journey from this place in Egypt to freedom, across the sea to Sinai, and we do it over 49 days. And on the 49th day, we receive the Torah from Sinai, and we get so excited at that moment that we actually study in the Jewish community all night long. And so you will be sending things out actually in the next week it's called Tikkun Leil Shavuot, where all the rabbis and the cantors, and we'll be teaching throughout the night to celebrate that we actually receive the Torah, that we get that mission, then we got to actually carry out that love in the world.
Thank you. And I always think of it also, just to add, that it's not enough that we have our freedom, but freedom for what? Freedom, and then we have to figure out what qualities we want to cultivate, what kind of world we want to create, and that's part of counting the Omer. So I'm going to sing it today. Big surprise. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu al sfirat haomer al sfirat haomer is the 6th day. Shavua Echad in the first week. Hayom Shisha Yom Shehem. Shavua Echad. Oh, Sfirat HaOmer. Oh, Sfirat HaOmer. Oh, Sfirat HaOmer. Oh, Sfirat HaOmer.
Thank you, Cantor.
You're welcome.
You are a magical gift to the world. When I die, give what's left of me away to children and old men that wait to die. And if you need to cry, cry for your brother walking the street beside you. And when you need me, put your arms around anyone and give them what you need to give me. I want to leave you something better than words or sounds. Look for me in the people that I've known or loved. And if you cannot give me away, at least let me live in your eyes and not in your mind. You can love me best by letting hands touch hands and by letting go of children that need to be free. Love doesn't die, people do. So when all that's left of me is love, give me away. As a congregation, we are remembering from earlier today the terrible attack at the Capitol, and we're remembering William F. Evans of the Capitol Police. As a congregation, we're remembering those who passed away in the last 30 days. Marion Lewenstein, Irving Gordon, Heidi Dittmar Armand, Irving Salmin, Armando Mondo Salazar, Paul Allen Morris Crow, Helen McKendall, Inge Bruns, Stephen Grand, Barry Kesser, Omar Nicholas Peralta, Adele Reich, Maureen Axelbaum, Edward Green. And we remember those whose yahrzeit, who passing falls on this Shabbat. Irving Bach, Joseph Blumlein, Shirley Steinu Surf, Rachamin Davidoff, Arthur Eckhouse, Sam Fleischman, Herman Fleischman, Rose Kaufman Friedman, Jacob Fried, Marvin Friedman, Bernard H. Gershik, Fanny Goldstein, Mauricio Gorender, Cecilia Gartenberg, Bertha Albert Grossman, Harry Hartman, Marion Herstein, Irving Kaplan, Ruth Kaufman, Shana Inda Kabaskaya, Leon Kraft, Maurice Liederman, Leo Leraberger, Stanley Lent, William Lowenberg, Emmy Lowenberg, Zerna Matfis, Elaine Magnin, Paul Milstein, Jeanette Nathan, Fabia Ann Phillips, Henriette Sepik, Masoud Yaakov Ben Asher Rastegar, Neville Rich, David Rosehill, Joseph Ivan Rosenbaum, Madeline Haas Russell, David Salvin, William Samuels, Irv Schatz, Rose Schmelzer, Miriam Siegel, Eve Siegel, Samuel M. Shoah, Meyer Siegel, Pesha Soloff, Esther Berkowitz Spiro, Marjorie Stone, Kyle Hardy Strang, Sol Volin, Elizabeth Waldman, Theodore Wenko, Eva Wellner, Rachel Pollock Worman, Eric Zorling. If there's someone else who you are remembering who passed away either in the last week, in the last 30 days, in the last year, or if this is the yahrzeit, the anniversary of their passing, I invite you to please share their name in the chat and please tell us what your relation is to them. We're on page 598. Yitkadal v'yitkadash shemei rabbah. V'yamad yivrach yotev yamlich machuteh. V'chayechon v'yomechon v'chayei d'chol Beit Yisrael. B'agala uvizman kali v'imru amen. Yehei shmei rabam v'varach le'alam omei omaya. Yitbarak v'yishtabach v'tba'ar v'tramam v'yitnasei. V'yitadar v'yitalev v'talal shmei d'gudisha brichu. Le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata. Tushbachata v'nechamata. Damiran v'yama v'imru amen. Yehei shlama rabba min shemaya. V'chaim aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael. V'imru amen. Oseh shalom b'mramav. Hu ya'aseh shalom. Aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael. V'imru amen. May the one who creates harmony on high bring peace to us, to all of Israel, to all of humanity. And let us all say, Amen.
Oh, say shalom b'mramav. Hu ya'aseh shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael. Ve'imru amen. Ya'aseh shalom, ya'aseh shalom, shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael. Ya'aseh shalom, ya'aseh shalom, shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael. Oh, say shalom b'mramav. Hu ya'aseh shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael. Ve'imru amen. Ya'aseh shalom, ya'aseh shalom, shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael. Ya'aseh shalom, ya'aseh shalom, shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael. So we are going to do the Kiddush and then the Motzi. So everybody grab your matzah. I have mine. And grab your whatever you are imbibing tonight. If you have something, raise it up together. Remember, it's more important to hold. I just learned recently that it's more important that the ritual is to hold the glass up. It's less about what if you drink it or not, actually. It's not as important. It's more important that you hold it up. We're not sanctifying the wine. We are sanctifying this moment of beginning Shabbat together with each other. So this is the moment that we're making a blessing on. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borei peri hagafein. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'ratavanu v'shabbat kodsho b'ahava uvratzon hinchilanu zikaron l'masei v'reishit ki hu yom techila lemikrei kodesh zecher litziat mitzrayim kivanu v'acharta ve'otanu kidashta mikol ha'amim ve'shabbat kodshecha be'ahava uvratzon hinchaltanu. Baruch atah Adonai mekadesh hashabbat lechaim. Lechaim.
L'chaim.
And there is that line in there that specifically is about Pesach. It says, Zecher litziat mitzrayim. It says, remember the going out from Egypt. And that's really about the time that we're in. But it's we sing it every Friday night that we remember.
And it's in that Via Havta. My favorite part is that in the Via Havta, my take on it is because you go through all these things. You got to remember to do all these mitzvot.
Yep.
And then the very last paragraph, and then he goes, because remember, and the mitzvot, it's all about doing. You only get credit if you do it. And then it says, remember, God took you out of the land of Egypt. And God only gets
Hotzeti etchem meretz Mitzrayim.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And because God did that, that's the only reason God gets credit. It's only based on our actions in the world.
Yeah. We're remembering Egypt. Okay, everybody. I have my matzah. Do you have yours?
Oh, it looks fantastic. I haven't had enough of that this week.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam hamotzi lechem min haaretz b'tei avon. Shabbat shalom.
Shabbat shalom. It's wonderful to be with you.
Wonderful to be with you.
Wishing everyone a joyful, meaningful Pesach where you really look deep within of where you are and also then look on the outside of where we are and where we need to go. Shabbat shalom.